Welcome back to the Astro Read. We are your hosts, Stella and Nayeli. This podcast is all about astrology, celebrity news, and how you can use astrology in your everyday life.
Great. And hi, everybody. Welcome back to our current subscribers, and hello to all our new viewers tuning in today. If you're new and you like our content, please feel free to subscribe. We're hoping to reach more subscribers by the end of this year. And by continuing to gain subscribers, it allows us to continue making this content, and your comments help us get ideas on new episodes and what topics you like best. And I know that Stella and myself, we really enjoy seeing what comments you have, and it really helps us out. So thank you so much for tuning in. For today's episode, we have an interview with a fellow astrologer, Kaitlyn Ramsay. And Kaitlyn is an astrologer and a coach, and she guides women back to their true selves by creating a safe space for them to explore their inner wisdom and to cultivate self-trust, allowing them to feel confident in creating a life they love. And in today's episode, we're going to learn more about Kaitlyn's story, how she coaches, how she got into this line of work, and why her natal chart shows that she could be destined to do this kind of work. And also to add, Kaitlyn is a certified astrologer through the Rebecca Gordon Astrology School, as well as a graduate of Deborah Silverman Applied Astrology Program. And she has earned her health and life coaching certification through Health Coach Institutes. So where she is now studying to get her next level coaching certificate of mastery. So it'll be really interesting to talk to Kaitlyn because she has that mixture of being an astrologer and being a coach and integrating both in working with clients. So thank you so much for being a part of today's episode, Kaitlyn. How are you doing this, morning for us when we're recording this?
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. And yeah, I'm doing well. It's evening here for me, so we're time traveling.
Yeah, that's right. Kaitlyn, you're based in Thailand, which we'll definitely get to. And another component of this episode is that it'll help us learn a little bit more about astrocartography, which we'll get to a bit later. And we'll go over how we can look up our astrocartography maps and how we can look up how different places in the world impact our lives. So, Kaitlyn, one of the things that's notable in your chart is that you have a T-square. So your T-square involves your Saturn, your Sun in Chiron, and your Pluto. And the three houses affected are your second house of worth and or financial worth, your fifth house, which involves creativity, children or sense of being a child, and love, and the ninth house, which relates to higher education, expanding horizons, and foreign travel. So in your life, have you ever noticed that you had to balance these areas of your life that are represented by the T-square?
Yeah, definitely. It's been kind of a lifelong journey. I knew from a young age that I was going to leave my hometown, so travel was always on the map for me. I remember when I was younger, I had told my first boyfriend at the time not to get attached because I knew that I was leaving. So it was always there. I told everyone that I was leaving. And also, yeah, kind of the stability piece of the second house, really finding home wherever I went to. Like, it was always a challenge for me to put down roots and to really just feel safe where I was. So that's been a journey that has been lifelong as well. And through the love and the joy and all of those things, it's really important for me. Like, that is probably the biggest theme in my life, is relationships and the lessons that I take from those relationships as well. So there's definitely been a balance.
Yeah, that's what I thought was really interesting about your chart, because you have all this leaving where you're from, but you have your moon in the fourth house. So it's kind of like, where's your anchor? Where are you, is that a question that you had? And I guess that's something that you explored a lot, right?
Totally. And it kind of just happened where when I would travel, I would just like the town that I'm in now, for instance, I was here, I was traveling, and then I realized a year after I was living in a dorm, I was like, I've been here a year living out of a suitcase. I think I should just rent a house. Like, I think I live here now. So wherever I go, I kind of put those roots for a little while until I feel like it's time to leave again.
Yeah, and with any T-square, for anybody that has that in their chart, you have to look at the part that's opposite the bottom of the T to see where to find balance, because basically with a T-square, it makes a T shape between three different planets or celestial bodies in your chart. And so to balance it out, you kind of have to make it into a cross or an X, however you want to look at it. And so for you, Kaitlyn, the house that balances out your T-square is the 11th house, which is about being unconventional or being your unique self, friendships, and also helping others and being a humanitarian, kind of seeing how to help people on a larger scale. So are there any areas of the 11th house areas that you think bring you balance in your life?
Totally. I think, like, especially with the friendships, when I can find friends that really do accept me for my true self and can really allow me to express in the ways that I feel are authentic to me. So having the group of friends that really accept me lets me just kind of, it like melts all of the tension away and the pressure away. And then also now in my work, like really helping others to feel comfortable and to really just stand in their light. So like just building this community of people who can do the same as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. Yeah, it's so interesting to see how it plays out, how certain configurations in a natal chart play out in somebody's life. And then in regards to the 11th house as well, your part of fortune is in Aries in the 11th house. And for anybody that isn't familiar with that, whenever you look up a natal chart, the part of fortune is symbolized by a symbol that has a circle and a cross in it, or an X in it, depending on how you look at it. And it represents where one finds happiness and success. And so for you, Kaitlyn, it'll probably be around 11th house areas of just, trusting your own unique ideas, helping others embrace their uniqueness, and living life according to your own terms, basically, which is something you've had to do in your adult life.
And I would also say just like fame and popularity, not necessarily in that negative sense where fame overwhelms you, but just like pushing your message forward, sharing your message with the world. So that's something else that I was thinking as well.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that that's kind of where it's going. Yeah, thank you for saying that, Stella.
Yeah, for sure. And then how does your Chiron, because that's something that I noticed as well. You have Chiron in the second house. Do you feel like you have a hard time expressing just because it's also in the same house as Mercury, or maybe like pushing your message forward? Because that might be like that juxtaposition between where your part of fortune is, where you need to be because you are, Sun in Leo, Mercury Leo, and then Chiron next to it. I saw that as sort of a contrast of what, how you should be perceived or how you should be pushing your message forward, and then your fears or the things that are holding you back. Do you feel that has been something that has been played out in your life?
1000%. That's been the story of my life. It's been really hard for me to express, and I kind of like describe it as the wounded lion. I don't know, like there's always been that wound, and it's been hard for me to really stand in the light. And it makes sense, like kind of the way that my life has turned out. I've always tried to mask it, whether it be like alcohol or just like doing these things or like doing them behind closed doors. Like my creativity really stays behind the closed doors for most of my life. So really just pushing past that comfort zone has been a lifelong thing. Like even through the fear, like I just kind of have to step off the edge a little bit, and it's scary every time.
Yeah, especially with Chiron in the second house, our values, who we value, our self-worth, really, like that's how I see it. And then like remedies I've always seen is just to be the type of person who just still pushes, even with the fear, do it in fear, do it anyway. That definitely applies to your chart. Like, do it afraid. So.
Totally.
And then speaking of your Chiron, Kaitlyn, your Chiron is also a part of another unique configuration that you have, which is more rare than the T-square, and that's the yod, which you don't really hear as much in astrology. I think in the Astro Read, we might have mentioned it a couple of times before, if that, because some celebrities will have yods in their chart. So for those that are unfamiliar, a yod is when at least three planets or celestial bodies, or a combination of both, make a Y shape in the chart. So that would involve two planets or celestial bodies that are in sextile with each other, and both of them being in conjunct a third planet or celestial body, like an asteroid or something like that. So with your yod configuration, it includes your midheaven, which is in Pisces, your Uranus and your Uranus and Neptune, which are both in Capricorn and both in the 7th house. And then the bottom of the Y, also known as the apex of the yod, is in the 2nd house and includes your Sun in Leo and your Chiron in Leo. And the apex in a yod configuration really determines a life mission that the person with the yod feels compelled to pursue. And a lot of times when the yod is activated, life will sort of move around and kind of reconfigure itself so that the person feels even more compelled to fulfill this life mission. So with your Chiron and Leo in the 2nd house, being a part of this apex, most likely your life mission will involve getting over or overcoming this internal wounds that you have, which, revolves around things that Stella was just mentioning before, like letting out your creativity, maybe having fear about whether you're liked enough or not liked enough. A lot of people with Chiron and Leo either try too hard to get attention or feel like they can't get it. And so they just don't even bother. And that's sort of like a sensitivity that they have. And people with the Chiron and Leo, they tend to be really good at supporting other people's creativity, but really not satisfied with how they let out their own creativity. So a big part of a Chiron for anybody, which we all have a Chiron in a certain sign and a certain house, is it represents our inner wounds, but it also represents where we can best support and heal others, because we sort of know what it's like to feel not quite so right in those areas and want to help people get over those wounds or fears while we try to get over those wounds. So you might have alluded to this before, Kaitlyn, but how does that Chiron and Leo wound, how has it played out in your life and your career, and how does it impact how you coach your clients?
Yeah, like thinking of it that way, and it's really kind of the journey to loving myself, I guess, putting it that way, like just finding that within myself, because oftentimes, I guess, especially with my Libra moon too, like relationships were really important to me. So I often was seeking that out in relationships and like not honoring my own self-love. So it's been the lifelong journey up until now and beyond, probably, just to learn how to say that I am worthy and like I love myself. Like that's been the real challenge. So and I guess that ties in with the creativity too, like not thinking that I'm valued enough, or why do I get to take up space? Like I shouldn't take up the space that maybe someone else that's better than me can take. So really like passing on the spotlight. I'd just rather be in the background. So it's been, especially through the pandemic, kind of like just showing up more and showing my face and taking up the space as well.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because a lot of like I know a lot of Leos. I have a lot of Leos in my life. And the one thing Leos are good at is taking up space in the conversation, in the expression of what they're doing, in the creativity, right? And so any Leo that I see that isn't expressing themselves is sort of stunted in that growth that they need in this lifetime. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, as much as you push, maybe even further pushing or going to that edge and beyond is really what's going to liberate you from a lot of those Chiron lessons, you know? And that's really like, I was looking at your chart, I was like, man, like she probably is very shy, but she needs to be super expressive because that Leo is going to like eat at you. Like it's going to say, you have to do more, you have to be more, you have to grow more, you know? And that's really fun to see and to meet you and to see that it, you know, when astrology meets, you know, life. But like, where do you go when it comes to like self-love? How do you show yourself self-love? How do you grow out of that Chiron wound to be able to, you know, love on yourself rather than the external, needing that external validation?
Yeah. And I think like just my Instagram alone has given me that. It's like I just posted a video today of like me, I started hula hooping and like roller skating and just doing these really fun things, like just collecting hobbies and actually doing them and not caring that I suck at it. It's like I'm just gonna do it because it's fun and like maybe somebody else will get joy from it too. Like really trying to embrace that Leo. And like you said, I've been dubbed the shy one, the quiet one my whole life. And like that alone eats me inside. It's like, I don't want to be shy. Like I do want to roar. So totally, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you say you collect hobbies because your North Node in Sagittarius is like, how many jobs have you had?
Oh my God, a million.
Like I was like, wow, she must be a collector. Like so much fun. That's what I love about Sagittarius energy. It's just fun. So like how have your jobs or the experiences you've had really helped you to be better for your clients, to be better in your life in general?
Yeah, I think it's really helped me just to not have the expectation that it needs to be one thing forever. And like my my mom specifically, she was the one who really pushed me to go to university, and then I ended up dropping out because it wasn't what I wanted. So the expectations on me was to go to university, get a job, like get a career, get your benefits, and then retire and travel. And like inside, I was like, that just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to me. So I dropped out and then moved across the country and did like, and I would say they were full on careers. Like I was an insurance agent, I was a flight attendant, I was an executive assistant in a corporate office. It was like these, I went from one job to another one and it didn't even make sense, like the way that I was moving through these jobs. So I think it really just allowed me to gain skills in a lot of different areas and also not to be like attached to it and not to really paint myself as one thing and really allow myself to just be who I am and like take what was valuable to me.
Yeah, and I'm sure that must be really helpful for your clients because, you know, you're helping them kind of discover and pursue their authentic selves and be able to, sometimes that comes with change. And I think a lot of people out there, especially now, as we've been in this pandemic and are phasing out of it, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have had wake up calls and are realizing, oh, wow, I'm in this job or I'm in this life situation and this isn't for me anymore. And a lot of those people probably feel like, well, I'm stuck in this job or I'm stuck in this city or I'm stuck in this situation. That's it. But you, from personal experience in your coaching, can probably show people how, you know, just because this is where you're at doesn't mean this is where you have to be for the long haul. So I can imagine the experiences you've had in being able to change jobs and change locations, which we'll get into the whole relocation thing later on. You know, I'm sure that's helped you be really adaptable and something you can take into your coaching.
Yeah, I've been saying that through the whole pandemic. I was like, I just think I've been training for this for a long time. So it really didn't phase me that much. I was like, okay, how can I help?
Yeah. And then with the yod, yods get activated. So for anybody that has a yod in their natal chart, definitely have it interpreted by an astrologer, whether it's one of us three, since we're all astrologers, or somebody else of your choosing, because yods will get activated. So every yod has an activation point, which is the point in the chart opposite the bottom of the Y. And when that gets activated, that starts the activation of the whole yod moving forward. So according to your yod, Kaitlyn, your yod most likely got activated sometime, when you were a baby, or whatever year it was where you were a baby. So, and so an outer planet has to be what activates the yod. So either Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. So when one of those planets hits the activation point, the yod is activated, and it can create despair for somebody. Since you were likely a baby when this got activated, I mean, you probably just cried a lot in your crib and probably didn't know what was going on. But after a yod is activated, it'll get reactivated anytime a slow moving planet or outer planet hits one of the yod points. So whenever Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto hits one of the points of your yod, it'll get reactivated, and it will bring about situations that will kind of bring you to having to see your life mission in a new way. And, with your life mission revolving around overcoming and utilizing that Chiron internal wounds that you have in Leo, there's been certain years where that has had a change in perspective or has been moved further along the way. So we looked up your yod and when it was likely activated based on its parts. And there's certain years, which I gave you a list of, where you likely had some sort of significance. And they really range from years in your childhood, up to the time you were in your mid-20s. So it really ranges. So is there any year or age in your life from that list that or a couple of them that you think were really significant and having to do with your journey of using and overcoming your Chiron and Leo wound?
Well, it's really funny you said about me crying a lot as a baby, because if my mom listens to this, she's going to be like, oh my God, that's exactly what it was. I was a really colicky baby, apparently. So, but other than that, most of those dates, I guess the earliest one would have probably been around the time that my parents were divorced. And I've kind of blocked that out, but I've communicated with my mom about it as well. And I guess it was a really traumatic experience for me. Just like going through that as a 5-year-old. So that was probably the earliest that I could really kind of remember. And the other dates were really a lot of movement. So like moving houses. We moved a lot. And in 2005, especially, that was a big one for me. My mom and I moved to a new city, and I was the new kid, and I really wanted to go to one school where I knew one kid at that school, and I wasn't able to go there. So I was like really just an angry teenager at that point. And then after that, a lot of like relationship stuff too, right? With my 7th house there as well, like a lot of breakups in those times, and just kind of having to rediscover myself, I guess, like in these new houses, like physical houses, new towns, and then just like new me, I guess. Like when you have a breakup, it's really hard to kind of find yourself again, for me anyway. So kind of like separating myself from the idea of being with someone and learning to live on my own again was really the theme.
That's interesting. And then in particular, when I look at your yod and the significant dates, and with 2005, that's when Uranus reactivated your yod. So something unexpected probably happened to reactivate the yod. And that's the thing to know about yods as well, for whoever's listening and wants to know more. The planet that's activating the yod at that point will bring about the characteristics that are bringing this change or realization. So if it's Uranus, probably something unexpected would happen that is reactivating your yod. Or if it's, Jupiter, maybe you're learning something new that brings about something with this yod. So yeah, it's really interesting that 2005 was one of those years that stood out. And so, yeah, so with people that have their yods, it's like buckle your seatbelts a little bit, because, there'll be times in life that will kind of shake things up a little bit or really make somebody get a further commitment to their life mission. But people that have yods tend to be very driven, right? Regardless of how they use their yod and how it looks like, because they're really called to do something. And, from what we've seen, it seems like, the work you're doing is really one of those manifestations of your life mission through your yod. So yeah, that's really interesting. And let's see, so in your chart, it shows that there's different indicators that show that you likely come from like a good background, a good family, a good home, but there could have also been challenges with your parents, especially in regards to a tug and pull, like kind of balancing what your needs or goals are for yourself versus what your family wants for you. So you have Jupiter in the fourth house, which according to Placidus house system, which could show that there's luck in your hometown or in your family concerns. But then you also have some indicators on your chart that could show challenge or strain, right? So you have Virgo on the fourth house as well, the fourth house of family and home, which could mean that you probably felt like very responsible or consumed with certain family expectations. And then you also have some challenging aspects to your midheaven. And a lot of people associate the midheaven with career, which is usually how it's interpreted, but the midheaven can also represent parental influences, especially father figures. And then there's some other indicators, but yeah, those two definitely stand out. And then also Sirius, which is the asteroid of nurturing and motherhood, is square your moon, which represents emotions, but the moon can also represent the mother. So yeah, just like an interesting mix of things in your chart that show that there's luck when it comes to your family and hometown, but also struggles. So in your life, did you ever feel that tug and pull between your desires and the expectations of your family? And if so, how did that impact your life decisions and how you approach your career and your coaching?
Yeah, definitely. And to speak to like the childhood as well, like coming from the house that I came from, like my dad he was a business owner. He did really well for himself and he was often working. Like I didn't have that father figure that was like playing with me or spending time with me, but I did have this like very big house to grow up in and everything was in its place. And it was like, don't touch anything because you're going to put it out of place. So very much of that Virgo energy, like everything just needs to be perfect. And it's almost like, yeah, perfect on the outside. And then the family unit inside wasn't like congruent with that, I guess. But then also as I grew older and when I was thinking about like, what do I want to be when I grow up? So this idea of going to school, like I had said before, my mom really wanted me to go to university and to like get a good job and to get benefits and like set myself up for the long run. But I always felt like that was not the case. I really wanted to take like a gap year or do something, take a break to really just sit with myself and see like, what do I want to do? Because when I went to university, I had no idea. I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist. That didn't happen. So then I just ended up a year and a half later dropping out of university and kind of doing my own thing. So I guess it worked out in the end.
Yeah, it's so interesting, like where life can take you. And yeah, I'm sure, having to go through that journey of making it out on your own and not necessarily just, deciding to follow your parents' wishes, but doing things your own way. I'm sure part of that must have been scary. And, you probably have clients that have something similar in their own lives or are going through a similar type of feeling of like going against what they think they should be doing or what they're being told is considered successful and going off and doing their own thing. So is that something that you encounter with your clients that you work with?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of my clients are mostly women that I've been working with who are in like corporate positions or in a job that is safe and secure and has like a regular paycheck. But these most clients of mine are people who want to move to more of like a spiritual business or more of like something that really hasn't been done before. And they are kind of scared because that's a scary thing to have this paycheck, to have the benefits, and then to just like hope that it all works out. Like they really are coming to me to get that clarity and to like feel that safety within themselves, as I've had to do as well many times, like just finding that safety in myself.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm sure that really helps in the type of coaching you provide. And then Stella alluded to your North Node before, and yeah, your North Node definitely is interesting, and it relates to what you do now. So you have your North Node in Sagittarius, in your 6th house, according to Placidus house system. And that means that your soul purpose could relate to sharing your truth or sharing your meaning of life or living in another country or focusing on your health. And you're likely to incorporate these areas into what you do in your day-to-day job. And then your pallasathene, which is the asteroid that represents where one has their wisdom and creativity, is also in the same sign and house as your North Node. So your pallasathene and North Node are very close together, which could mean that your soul purpose and your wisdom and creativity are very aligned. So, with your work, obviously you do coaching, from this interview, we've gathered that you're really, one of the ways in which you help people is, helping them embrace their creativity or embrace what they really want to do, what they desire. And so with your soul purpose, being involved with sharing your truth or living in another country and having that be incorporated in your work, how does that play into your career? And when did you first, or have you ever realized that you really felt this need to share your truth or share your life philosophy?
Yeah. And I think like really just the travel alone and living in other countries has kind of brought that wisdom as well. So really just seeing how other people live. And I'm living in Thailand, which is mainly a Buddhist country. So really like watching these practices and the spirituality that they hold as well has really been a part of my daily life as well. Like I wouldn't call myself Buddhist, but I do take a lot of those practices. So the spiritual aspect and also the wisdom of just like talking to people and seeing how they live has been really helpful for me to kind of, because it's so different than the West. Like the way that I grew up was so different and the goals were so different. So it's really helped me to become more mindful and also to help other people to do the same, because I think in the West, we're just like always going and like we never have time to really think about or to just be. So that's definitely something that I've been helping clients with as well. And yeah, just sparking that creativity that's already within them has been really fun to watch.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And especially during the pandemic, it's all forced us to take a pause in some sort of way, whether it's brought about challenging situations or positive ones. And so, yeah, I think before it was probably harder collectively as a society for us to slow down and think about, okay, well, what is really going on in our lives? And I think with the pandemic, it's forced most of us to do that a lot more. So very timely that, you're providing the work, in your life that you are, that's helping people through this time. And then another thing that's notable in your chart is that your pallasathene, which is near your North Node, it has certain aspects and a placement that could show that you might have skills in regards to, healing the physical body or advocating for women's rights. And, one of the interesting aspects of your coaching is that you incorporate different things like astrology and other skills that you have. But when it comes to these two, healing of the body and advocating for women's rights, are those things that you have thought about incorporating in any kind of way, or could see as untapped potentials? And if not, are there any other areas that you're really hoping to incorporate into your coaching, whether it's now or in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I've been exploring that a lot more now. Also, I am a yoga teacher as well, and I'm hoping to bring that back in. I've been registered as a yoga teacher for years now, but I've kind of just not done anything with it. So I'm like, when you speak about healing the body, I really do want to have this like somatic part to my work as well as like hopefully Reiki in the future. I've taken my level 1, hoping to go further with that, as well as like just more intuitive gifts as well. So like I do a lot of like woo-woo type things in my coaching, different modalities, like working with chakras and oracle cards and like angel messenger stuff as well. So like channeling as well. So hoping to build more upon that. And maybe that's the Pisces midheaven too. Like I'm just pulling in all of these things and still kind of learning what works and getting the processes and feeling into where I want to go next and what tools I want to bring in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, go on ahead. Yeah, Stella.
And I was actually just to talk about some of the challenges, because right now I'm looking at your chart. I use whole signs, but in your chart right now, your Saturn return is like in full swing.
Yep. Yeah, it is.
And it's pressuring not only the fact that Saturn is in the 8th house, but that stellium across from it in Leo. So there's a lot of pressure financially, pressure emotionally, maybe some issues within, setting some stuff set in stone with your business. How has this Saturn return affected you? And then of course you have Uranus in the 11th house right over I forgot what the pallasathene you said, or across from Pluto.
Yeah, Pluto, I think Pluto's in Scorpio in the 5th house, but yeah, there's the north node and the pallasathene are both in Sagittarius in the 6th. Yeah.
So all of this being affected by Saturn, I mean, it's activating a lot of parts of your chart. So what has been going on and how have you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing, and it was a little bit before my Saturn return was really in full swing. It might have been a little bit of Uranus work as well, but in 2020, I quit drinking and quit like substance. I would say substance abuse. I was going to say use, but at that point it was very much abuse. And like my physical body was starting to give out. So I had to make a decision, and that was the one that I had to make. So that was when I really brought more of these mindfulness practices back in as I was getting sober. So it was really, I would say it was a complete like death and rebirth, because I had been using alcohol since I was 14, I would say. And just looking back now, during my Saturn return, I realized that it has been a problem for most of that time. So really just quitting that and learning more about myself. So this is when I also started learning more about astrology and getting more into like, who am I? Like, I'm done masking it with all of these things. I want to learn who I am and I want to love who I am. So I guess for my Saturn return, it was really mostly that for me, and also a breakup as well. So we had gotten sober together and I was growing, and I had to we kind of had to make a decision that it just wasn't working anymore. So I grew a lot through that relationship as well, and had to let it go. And yeah, like the finances and the security type of stuff that's coming up, I guess, is that I'm feeling as though, I'm not sure where I'll go yet, but I'm feeling that it's coming again, like that I may be relocating or something along those lines, like finding my community, as well as like a place that I can really just be myself and call home.
Yeah. We'll look at your astrocartography map pretty soon, because I have my ideas. That's where you can go, but it's up to you. But it's so interesting that you mentioned all of this, and thank you so much for bringing up the Saturn return, because we'll just go into this and then kind of one other aspect of your chart, and then kind of get into the astrocartography. But all the things you're saying make about what you learned like during the height of your Saturn return makes a lot of sense. It's one thing to go through your Saturn return, but it's another when you have a yacht involved. So Saturn in 2019, which could have trickled over into 2020, activated the part of your chart, the part of your yacht that has Uranus and Neptune in the 7th house. So with Saturn hitting it, totally relates to a Saturn return, also brings about harsh lessons. And then with Uranus and Neptune, I can see those influencing you having to let go of illusions, you know, whether it was brought on, in your case, illusions brought on by your dependence on substances like alcohol, and then also using, letting go of those things to order to really become more of your authentic self, and really being more accepting of yourself, which relates to Uranus. And then it all happening in the confines of the 7th house, which is the 7th house of relationships. So that's, really interesting to see how a yod being activated in a certain year played out in your life, right? And those things have happened in other years and will continue to happen. So one more thing I wanted to bring out before we get to your map, which will be really interesting, is that your Sirius, which is the asteroid of motherhood, but also relates to the asteroid nurture, is in the unique sign of Aquarius. So with that, you likely nurture others by helping them accept their eccentricities and their unconventionality, and just helping people see their unique selves or what's unique about them. So how do you think that plays a role in the coaching that you do?
Yeah, I think for me, that's where astrology really comes in and really helps me to do that, because I love looking at people's gifts and like what they are good at and what comes natural to them, and really like nurturing that out of them. Like maybe these are parts of them that have been suppressed or hidden or like unaccepted by society. So really just allowing those a safe place to come out has been really important in my coaching. So just like through astrology, it's such a gift, because, and like that was the gift that was given to me as well through astrology, like really accepting who I am. So I just feel like now it's kind of my duty to like pass that on. I just can't keep it to myself. So it's really, nurturing the gifts that people hold, and like not trying to do things that maybe aren't so important for them in this lifetime. Really just holding those, like the things that they're good at and that they like should be giving to the world.
Yeah, for sure. And the sign Aquarius also does relate to astrology. So yeah, it's very interesting that how that's manifested in your life. And yeah, I can relate to astrology having been a tool for me to help me accept more of myself, and now wanting to impart that into people I work with or in the work I do with astrology. So yeah, that's just one of the other things in your natal chart that has manifested in how you do work. So now let's get into the location part. So we're going to find out a little bit more about the places you've lived in that have had a significance in your life. And through that, we'll hopefully be teaching listeners today how they can look up their astrocartography chart to see how different places they've either lived in or are thinking of going to, whether it's to relocate or to travel, could impact their lives. So let's get into that. Let's get into the astrocartography. So for those that are not familiar, the astrocartography, it's a map. And if you ever look at the map, it has lines all across pretty much a map of the world or a map of a certain area in the world. Each line will be associated with a certain planet. And that planet having an influence over a certain part of the world will bring a sort of characteristics to that place for you, or bring about.
It's gonna activate the part of your chart that is lined up with that area. So
Yeah.
if it is, for example, you're in Thailand right now, and I'm seeing an activation of Venus and your MC. So your your uppermost part of your chart, you know, your career, etc. So that might be, Thailand might bring that out in you as you live in that place. So that's what I really see with astrocartography. It's a connection between you and the chart, or your personal chart, and the place that you live. So yeah.
So it's for sure. So it's really interesting. And not only will that place in the world affect you in a certain way based on the planet, you know, that has an influence over it, but objects from that area of the world. So let's explore the first place that's of significance. So you are originally from PEI.
PEI.
For those that are not familiar, is the smallest province in Canada and really tiny.
Yeah.
And you're from I'm like clicking it on the map right now, and we'll put the link in the description for where you can pull up your own astrocartography. So I clicked on PEI, and it has Mars square midheaven. So this could bring tension. Demands are placed on you. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening there, but yeah, it's bringing. So Mars being over a certain area could bring certain tensions. So relates to, oh yeah, I'm not sure. Stella, are you hearing me? Like, I feel like the feedback's coming back where I hear myself. Let me keep on talking. Okay, so so I clicked on PEI, and let me make sure that I click the right part of PEI. And I see, and the thing with an area, for those that are listening, is a lot of times you may have multiple planets that could be impacting that area. So one of the planets that's coming up is for PEI is Jupiter and Uranus, and it could lead to recklessness, taking risks, having a sense of freedom, maybe restlessness. So are those qualities that impacted your life in PEI, Kaitlyn, from what you can remember when you were in your hometown?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of recklessness as well. Like that is where I started drinking, and like, it's a small town, so we do some crazy things to keep busy and to keep occupied. And also definitely the restlessness, like I said before, really knowing that I wasn't going to be there. And I think a lot of people knew that about me as well. It was like very well known that I was not going to be there after a certain point. So definitely wanting to break free from the structures and like who I was and just the town in general. So definitely accurate.
Yeah. And the cool thing about astrocartography is it shows how one place can impact somebody in a certain way and impact somebody else in another way, because it's just dependent on the energies that that place brings for that person. And so then, yeah, you always felt restless PEI, and then you moved next to St. John's, right?
Yeah.
So let's see what St. John's brings up. And you went to St. John's to go to university. So that's when you were still on that, you know, typical path, kind of following what your family wanted you to do. And so clicking on St. John's, it has Neptune along that line. So a Neptune descendant line. And so that could bring a lot of illusions, being aware of your spirituality. But you could also be really deceived in that area. You know, Neptune is a planet that brings insight in a spiritual or artistic way, but it can also bring illusions. So are any of those characteristics things that you encountered during your time in St. John's?
All of the above. That's actually where I took my first yoga class. So that was where I started doing yoga daily, and really like, I didn't know it was spirituality at that point. It was just like, okay, I'm going to this class and doing this thing and it feels good. But on the other hand, I had actually moved my boyfriend from PEI at the time to come live with me. And at that time, I don't remember where I went or what I was doing, but I had come back to St. John's to find that he had slept with my best friend. So there was that delusion of my relationship and my friendship, and those two fell apart. And I just stopped it there. I was like, I'm not going to be your friend and I'm not going to be your girlfriend. So yeah, definitely big things happening.
Yeah, around delusions. And then where did you go next after St. John's?
So I spent a little bit of time in Halifax to do, actually, I did my flight attendant course there, which then, yeah, that was what led me to the other side of Canada.
Yeah. So Halifax, Halifax in Canada, in Nova Scotia, I think. I should know this because I had studied this to become a Canadian citizen, but I clicked on Halifax, and one of the influences that comes up is Saturn-Pluto crossing. So both of those planets having an influence. So, described as a place that's very sobering, where you're kind of getting it's funny because St. John's had Neptune, which is all about like illusions, but also idealism. It's almost, Neptune can be a planet that can put like the rose-colored glasses on a lot of times. And now in Halifax, you have the influence of planets that are very different. So Saturn is sort of like the rude awakening kind of planet, like having a wake-up call and having to get it together and set up a new structure for yourself. And but then also Pluto being involved, which is a planet of transformation and of things kind of being broken down to build back together again. So yeah, that relates to probably what you were going through in Halifax. It was sort of that intermission between your life in St. John's and then moving off to the other half. And then that's when you went to Yellowknife, which has a lot of influences, a lot of planets crossing, and that was a very impactful place in your life. How did Yellowknife stand out to you? I mean, there's so many planets that are influencing, it's hard to even pick one, but what do you think was the most significant thing about Yellowknife for you?
I think it was just for the fact alone that it was on the complete opposite end of the country and like really far north and kind of no man's land. It was really that time for me where I truly stepped away. Like being in the East Coast, it still feels really small. It feels like home wherever you go. But Yellowknife was really that, like me stepping out of the safety net, because being in St. John's or being in Halifax, I was still close to family. I could just like hop over. But being in Yellowknife, it was like, okay, now you're on your own. You got to figure your stuff out and get it together. And a lot of things happened there. I changed jobs a lot, and I also got a really great job for the age that I was. I think I was 23 at the time, and I climbed the corporate ladder pretty quickly, and I was making a lot of money, and I found who I thought was the love of my life, but turns out that wasn't the case. But I really had a great experience there, and like friendships, and just I really liked my life there. And I always say, like, if I'm to go back to Canada, that is probably the one place that I would settle down or go and call home.
Because you're in Thailand now. So then what made you decide to leave Yellowknife, and where did you go next?
Yeah, so it was almost a shock to me, to be honest. I thought I was on this track and like doing the corporate thing, making the money. I had a loving partner at the time. I thought everything was great. I spent a lot of time with his family and things were going well, but then he had told me that he needed some time alone, and that kind of broke me. So at that point, I had always had this like Lonely Planet Australia book on my shelf, and I had always said, I think since high school, that I wanted to travel Australia. And he really encouraged me to follow that dream. So I'm super grateful to him for that, because without that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I really just had that opportunity. I quit my corporate job. I think my mom probably had a panic attack about it, because I was like doing very well for my age. So So in her eyes, I was throwing my life away, but in my eyes, it was kind of just getting started. So I booked a one-way ticket to Australia, got the visa paperwork, quit my job, sold my things, and got on an airplane.
And where did you end up in Australia? Because Australia is pretty big. So I think you had mentioned to me before, you ended up in northwestern Australia. So kind of a more remote part to this town called Karratha. Let's see how that affects you. So that is where you have the moon influence and also Neptune. So this place could bring you a lot of sensitivity and imagination, could get you more in tune with your spirituality because Neptune is involved there. And you could go through a lot of, emotional realizations and different moods with the moon and Neptune being involved. So how have those descriptions that I just mentioned, how did those impact your life in Karratha when you did live there?
Yeah, so actually it's funny because each time I'm on a Neptune line, that's when I get back into yoga, it seems. So I started going to yoga again there and really like getting that practice back. And that was after I traveled the east coast of Australia, and I had gotten the opportunity before I went there to fly there to au pair for a beautiful family. So my time there was spent taking care of two young boys. So that moon influence, I was kind of like nurturing these children and taking care of them and really like opening my imagination too, to be present with these children and to really like take care, and to like when you're around children, that just happens, right? Like you kind of go to that place of imagination and playing the games. And the house that I was in was kind of that community house as well. So like I would all of a sudden have all of the kids on the street in the house playing. So it was a really fun time. I really did feel that moon influence for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And then so from there, from Australia, you moved over eventually to Thailand, and Thailand. So right now you're more on the western side of Thailand. So it's interesting with Thailand. On the eastern side of the country, Venus shows up in your astrocartography, but on the west side, which is where you're at, Pluto shows up. And so with that means that the part of Thailand you're in can bring about transformation once again, sort of like you had experienced in Halifax. I believe that was the last place where you had Pluto, but this one in Thailand is a Pluto ascendant line, which means kind of a bit of a more positive transformation, and there isn't Saturn involved. So it's a different type of transformation that you could experience in Thailand compared to Halifax. But with Pluto, it brings about transformation, but also potential power struggles as well. And ultimately, all of that leads to your personal transformation. So has Thailand brought about those qualities in your life?
Yeah, so it was kind of, I think I mentioned it before, but really that sense of like Pluto, the death and rebirth, like I am a completely different person on the other end of this Pluto line, I'll tell you that much. So a lot of, I guess, my alcoholism really amped up here. So that was something that happened, as well as the two relationships that I was in. The one at the beginning was probably the hardest, and that was really a power struggle. There was like abusive things happening, and like without getting into the details, like police were involved, and it got messy, and there was a lot of power is definitely the word. And interesting enough, the relationships that I did have here were both with Scorpio men. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. And then, yeah, I guess just like getting to that point where my body was starting to give out, I was just not taking care of myself, just kind of beating myself down and allowing others to do the same. So really just, I had to say like enough is enough, or my body had to tell me enough is enough. So that was really where that turnaround happened, where I had to get sober and really think about my life and to bring some of these practices that I've kind of collected along the way, this is where they really came out and showed me like what I was worth and what I could do. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's so interesting about the relationships you were in were with Scorpio men, and Pluto is one of the ruling planets of Scorpio, and just all the transformation that you encountered. So, with astrocartography, you could see how different places could affect you, and even whether it affects you in a lighthearted way or in a more challenging way. Like, it seems like, in your case, Kaitlyn, every place you've lived in was a certain chapter in your life. And brought you certain, I guess, qualities that you had to recognize at that point in life. It's like you were living in the place that reflected where you were soul-wise at that point. So you've mentioned that you see yourself relocating in the future. What kind of vibes do you want in the new place that you live in? Quite a bit of Saturn, quite a bit of Pluto, Moon, Neptune. They're all kind of heavy planets when it comes to transformation and emotion. Are there any vibes that you're looking for in the new place that you live, wherever that may be, that might be the same or different? Like, what are some qualities you're looking for in that new place?
Definitely more stability. I feel like life has been pretty chaotic. I'm definitely feeling the heaviness, coming out of the heaviness now that I feel like the lessons are kind of sunk into my being now. I'm definitely ready for something lighter. And it's so funny because you mentioned before about how on the eastern side of Thailand is where my Venus line is, and that's where I would go for vacation. So without knowing the astrology of it, now looking back, it's like, it makes sense why I would get my breaks over there. So maybe something like Venus, or like something lighter where I can really just breathe, I guess.
Yeah. So for anybody that's searching for that, if you're looking at your astrocartography chart, focus on areas that have Venus or Jupiter, because Venus will bring attention. It'll bring opportunities to be able to show your creativity. So that brings about, so those two planets, and they're also benefic planets, they will bring good vibes. So
you literally took the words like right out of my mouth, because I was like, Philippines is right there. And Jupiter is right over the Philippines. I'm just throwing it out there as an option. And it might be the most amazing experience that you could have. That was my prediction. I was like, that looks like a great spot, because it kind of takes you that Eastern feeling of Thailand, that vacation feeling, but it also amplifies some luck, some financial stability, some emotional stability, maybe luck with neighbors and a community that you build around yourself. So that's something that triggers your third house. So, it would be great. It would be a really great experience if I was to read your astro chart.
Wow. So you're thinking Philippines. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That could, I'm seeing it now. Also, if you're looking at Venus, Europe, like Iceland, Ireland, France, parts of Spain, that has your Venus ascendant line. So that could also be a place that brings good vibes, but maybe more along the lines of like creativity, love.
Like the love of your life vibes too.
Yeah. So if you want luck, go to Stella, you said the Philippines was where the Jupiter was?
Yes. And then Europe was where her love life could expand on a more serious level, because right now you're going through your Saturn return. I would say like after your Saturn return, it would be a great time to maybe explore Europe. So if you're looking to establish a relationship, but first, anything on your love astrology, like a little bit, but since you have Neptune and Uranus in the 7th house, maybe looking at those influences and being more selective, especially since they're in Capricorn, looking for people who are maybe the opposite of what you'd expect. Someone who is unexpected in positive ways. You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to the bad boy that you might be attracted to because Uranus is there, maybe the guy who travels a lot, maybe the guy who looks at life in a different way, so those are the types of relationships that might be good for you to explore as you move into, your Venus and Europe experience, if you're interested in that.
I love that. And that's really kind of where I feel like I'm at now. I'm kind of And I know like with the seventh house, I've kind of accepted those parts of me. So now I'm like my radar is turned on very much so. So I love that you said that because yeah, that's where it's going. No more of this chaos in relationships. If I can
Yeah,
help
you've learned
it.
your lessons through that.
And that's the thing, as females or in the female influence, we can select chaos because chaos brings interesting things to us, but we can also be selective in the chaos. It could be that maybe he's a busy person. It could be that maybe they're looking to expand their business and they see you as a business owner and they're really excited with you, you know, and it could be a positive chaos as opposed to the darker side. Especially with Pluto and Scorpio, you might attract a darker side influence to that chaos. So, you know, looking at that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yeah. I love astrology, so we can talk about this for hours.
Oh my gosh, yes. I love Stella's synastry. Well, I mean, Stella does a lot of things in astrology, but her synastry readings, I am a client of it. You know, I do my own astrology, but when it comes to synastry, you know, I need somebody that could be outside of my own head, obviously. Bias and Stella's synastry readings are on point. Like, highly recommend for anybody that's looking to find out how they match with an individual, whether it's somebody they're dating right now, want to date, or have dated and want to reflect back on like why it didn't work out, like kind of thing.
Yeah, and then definitely how to improve yourself in your love astrology. So what to do for yourself. And that's definitely something like if you move to Europe, since it's sitting your AC, your first house, you're really going to be transformed emotionally by the love that you attract there. You know, whether it's one person or many people, you know, I'm not sure, but that's where it would be most positively influenced.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, maybe you, whether you travel to those areas like Iceland or France or not, maybe it's being with somebody that's from that culture or lived there can also be an interpretation as well. Like maybe you move to the Philippines and you meet somebody who's Icelandic that happens to be in the Philippines. So it's so true. You get both influences. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, Kaitlyn, with wherever you end up next, you know, location-wise and career-wise. Yeah, that concludes this episode, and it's been so great having you be a part of this episode and sharing your story, and also using your astrocartography map to show some insight to the audience as to what to look for in their own maps as far as how places can influence them. So before we fully wrap up, Kaitlyn, is there anything else you want to share? Anything you want to share about where people can find you, what kind of work you do, and what people can really gain from working with you as a coach?
Yeah, what upcoming projects do you have that we can all like, you know, maybe invest in or learn more about?
Yeah. So right now I'm mostly I'm actually about to open up my coaching program again. So I run a 12-week container one-on-one coaching for like everything that I talked about, mostly women who are moving from like a stable job or like going through some sort of change or anticipating some sort of change and wanting that stability moving forward and that trust in themselves and trust in the universe as well, kind of co-creating this experience that they want to have. So I offer a free discovery call for anyone who's interested to see if we're a good match, because it is a relationship. So I want to make sure that it's fitting, and also my astrology readings as well. So right now I'm offering astrology readings, and I am working on a bit of a rebrand, and some more services will be coming out soon. And I'm hoping to launch some like courses as well. I have one kind of brewing in my head, so that should be coming out soon. But mostly you can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, and I go live every Tuesday. I call it Tuesday Tea, and you can sit and chat with me, and I kind of share the astro weather or anything that's really just apparent in my life at the moment that I feel like should be shared. So definitely check out my Instagram and follow me there, and my website as well.
Okay, great. And we'll link.
So awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, a lot of good things coming up. So I'm definitely excited to check some of those things out. And we'll put the links in the description for everybody listening as to how you can find out more about Kaitlyn's work, you know, how to easily follow her Instagram and all of that. So yeah, that concludes this episode. Thank you so much for everybody for listening. Thanks to Kaitlyn for being a part of this. And I'm hoping everybody listening today, got some insight into Kaitlyn's work and, how things can manifest in somebody's life and determine or influence what calling they do and how they act it out. And also, looking up how you can find your astrocartography chart and see where you want to travel next, now that we can travel a little bit more at this phase of the pandemic. So yeah.
Yep, finally.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, take care, everybody. See you in the next episode.